The final days of Berlin. The war was almost over, yet in Berlin, it was only beginning. April 1945 saw the Nazi capital transform into a city on the edge of oblivion, with destruction closing in from all sides. The Soviet Red Army loomed just kilometers away, its cannons already reducing the outskirts to ash and rubble. But here's the mystery. Why did Berlin, an already doomed city, choose to fight to the bitter end? What secrets were hidden within its walls that made surrender unthinkable? As the Allies advanced, whispers began to circulate. Whispers of underground bunkers, secret technology, and documents so explosive that the fate of nations might hinge upon their discovery. Was Berlin simply a battleground, or was it something more? A repository of secrets the Nazis were desperate to keep buried? On the surface, the city was prepared for war. Makeshift barricades blocked the streets, anti-tank guns were positioned at key intersections, and children armed with Panzerfausts waited in shadowed alleys. Yet beneath this facade of defiance, fear was palpable. Civilians scurried between the ruins, dodging artillery fire, while Nazi leaders, ensconced in underground bunkers, issued orders disconnected from reality. Why did they cling to hope in a situation so utterly hopeless? Was it blind fanaticism, or something far more calculated? In these final days, Berlin became more than just the heart of the Third Reich. It was a symbol, a puzzle, and perhaps even a graveyard for truths lost to history. What decisions were made in Hitler's bunker as the walls closed in? What treasures or terrors might still lie beneath the ruins, waiting to be unearthed? These are the questions that linger, unanswered and haunting. Welcome to Celestial Chronicles, where we dive into the shadows of history to uncover the mysteries of our past. Let's unravel this story together. Join the conversation below. Seelow Heights, the bloody gateway. The road to Berlin was anything but easy. Before the Red Army could storm the Nazi capital, they had to break through the Seelow Heights, a ridge standing between them and victory. This wasn't just another battle, it was one of the last great clashes of World War II. The Soviets brought over 1 million soldiers, thousands of tanks, and more artillery than anyone had ever seen. The Germans, outnumbered and desperate, dug in to hold the line. The fighting lasted 3 days. Soviet forces launched wave after wave of attacks, while German defenders used everything they had to slow them down. The terrain worked against the Soviets, with muddy fields and flooded areas making it nearly impossible to move tanks and equipment. Mines hidden in the ground and heavy German artillery added to the chaos. But there's something strange about this battle. The Soviets had every advantage: more troops, more weapons, and better supplies. So why did they suffer so many losses? Marshal Zhukov, the Soviet commander, ordered direct assaults against the ridge, a decision some call reckless. Did he rush this operation to reach Berlin before the Western Allies, or was it the only choice he had? For the Germans, Seelow Heights was about more than survival. It was their last stand to protect Berlin. For the Soviets, it was a bloody and costly step toward the heart of the Third Reich. What would you have done in such a desperate situation? Let's talk about it in the comments. Encircling the Nazi capital. After breaking through the Seelow Heights, the Red Army moved quickly to surround Berlin. Their goal was simple: trap the remaining German forces and cut off any chance of escape or reinforcements. Soviet troops advanced from the north, south, and east, closing the circle tighter each day. Inside the city, life became a nightmare. The German military was running on fumes. Most experienced soldiers had already been lost in earlier battles. The defenders of Berlin were now a mix of exhausted troops, untrained recruits, and even children from the Hitler Youth. Supplies were running out, and morale was sinking, but surrender wasn't an option. Hitler, hiding in his bunker deep beneath the city, demanded that everyone fight to the last breath. The Soviets were determined to end the war quickly. They pushed through Berlin's outer defenses, but progress wasn't easy. Every street was a battlefield, with German soldiers using rubble as cover. Anti-tank weapons like the Panzerfaust turned narrow alleys into death traps for advancing Soviet tanks. Meanwhile, Berlin's civilians were caught in the middle, trying to survive as bombs rained down and food disappeared. There's something haunting about these final days. Why did Hitler and his inner circle refuse to surrender when the war was clearly lost? Was it blind loyalty to their cause, or did they hope for some last-minute miracle? Some say the Nazi leadership believed in secret plans, hidden weapons, or even the idea that the Western Allies might turn against the Soviets. What do you think? Were these decisions driven by logic, desperation, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. The Battle for Berlin. The Battle for Berlin was brutal. Soviet forces attacked from every direction, determined to capture the city and end the war. Streets turned into battlefields, and buildings became fortresses. For the defenders, every inch of Berlin was worth fighting for, even though defeat was certain. Soviet artillery bombarded the city day and night, reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble. Tanks rolled through the streets, supported by soldiers fighting house to house. The Germans, outnumbered and outgunned, used what little they had left. Teenagers, old men, and women were conscripted to fight alongside soldiers, many armed with nothing but rifles or Panzerfausts. They turned staircases, basements, and parks into defensive positions, slowing the Soviet advance. But why were ordinary civilians willing to fight for a lost cause? Some were driven by fear of the Soviets, of Nazi punishment, or simply of the unknown. Others still believed in Hitler's propaganda, clinging to the hope that some secret weapon or miracle would save them. Inside his bunker, Hitler continued to issue impossible orders, disconnected from the grim reality above. Amid the chaos, rumors spread. Some claimed the Nazis had hidden treasures, secret documents, or advanced technology beneath the city. Others whispered of underground bunkers where elite units might make a final stand. Were these just fantasies to keep people going, or was there some truth to them? As the battle raged on, the Soviets tightened their grip. What do you think motivated the last defenders of Berlin? Was it loyalty, desperation, or something else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. The fall of the Third Reich. By the end of April 1945, Berlin was on the verge of collapse. The Soviet army had encircled the city completely, and their troops were fighting through its streets. Inside the chaos, Adolf Hitler retreated to his underground bunker, refusing to leave even as the city crumbled around him. On April 30th, he took his own life, ending his rule and leaving his closest followers to face the inevitable. Despite Hitler's death, the fighting didn't stop right away. German troops continued to resist, following orders from the few remaining Nazi leaders. Some still believed they could hold out long enough for a miracle, perhaps a split between the Soviets and the Western Allies. Others fought simply because surrender seemed impossible. What could they expect from the Soviets after years of brutal war? Above ground, Berlin was a wasteland. Entire neighborhoods had been destroyed by artillery and airstrikes. Fires raged through the rubble, and food and water were almost gone. For the city's residents, survival meant hiding in basements or makeshift shelters, hoping to avoid both the Soviet soldiers and the constant bombardment. The Soviets moved steadily closer to the heart of the city, capturing key landmarks like the Reichstag. The final days of fighting were some of the most intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Soviet soldiers raised their flag over the Reichstag on May 2nd, symbolizing the fall of Berlin and the end of the Nazi regime. Shortly after, German forces in the city surrendered, but even as the battle ended, questions remained. What happened to the key figures of the Third Reich? Some were captured, others committed suicide, and a few vanished entirely, fueling rumors of escape or hidden agendas. Evidence of secret bunkers, missing documents, and stolen treasures added to the mystery. Was Berlin simply a battlefield, or did it hold secrets the Nazis hoped to bury forever? The fall of Berlin wasn't just the end of the war in Europe. It was a moment that shaped the future of the world. The city's capture marked the beginning of Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe and the division of Germany, setting the stage for the Cold War. What do you think Berlin's ruins still hide, if anything? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your theories. Legacy and lessons. The fall of Berlin was the end of one of history's darkest chapters, but it was also the start of something new. In May 1945, the city lay in ruins. Its buildings destroyed, its people broken, and its future uncertain. Yet Berlin became a symbol of the changes that followed the war. The world wouldn't simply move on, it would rebuild and reshape itself in the shadow of this devastation. Berlin's fall marked the end of the Nazi regime, but it also set the stage for the Cold War. With the city divided between the Soviets in the east and the Western Allies in the west, Berlin became the front line of a new global conflict. Its streets, once battlegrounds of war, now represented the division of ideologies, communism versus democracy. The scars left by the battle and the war didn't heal quickly. Some are still visible today. But beyond the physical destruction, Berlin also became a reminder of the cost of unchecked power and hatred. The atrocities uncovered in the months after the war, concentration camps, mass graves, and the horrors inflicted on innocent people, shocked the world. These revelations led to trials, memorials, and promises of never again, even as questions about how such events could happen lingered. The fall of Berlin also raised mysteries that remain unsolved. What happened to some of the Nazi leaders who disappeared? Were all the hidden treasures and documents recovered, or do they remain buried beneath the city's rubble? And what lessons from Berlin's fall can we apply today as the world continues to grapple with war and division? Berlin's story is one of destruction and rebuilding, of despair and resilience. It shows us both the worst and best of humanity, how easily we can destroy, and how hard we must work to rebuild. What do you think Berlin's story teaches us? Is it a warning, a symbol of hope, or both? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's learn from history and ensure its lessons aren't forgotten.